Is anybody here in the house? Oh boy, that was terrible. We have to do better than that. Good morning, UCA. My name is Rebecca Cheung, and I'm from the University of California at Berkeley and a member of this year's Convention Planning Committee. Before we engage in the important conversation with our panelists, please join me in welcoming students from the Cortinas School of the Visual and Performing Arts. This school is a dual-mission high school dedicated to providing aspiring artists and scholars with an academically rigorous pre-college curriculum and a comprehensive 4-year pre-conservatory arts program. The school's mission is to provide an exemplary arts and academic experience to students who have passion for the arts, are culturally and socioeconomically diverse, and hail from all across Los Angeles. This school is situated within walking distance of our hotel. They walked here this morning from school. And they offer the highest caliber of arts-integrated education and the opportunity to access the rich cultural vibrancy of the Los Angeles arts community. Join me one more time in welcoming our student performers.
All right, my name's Drew Lewis. I'm the music teacher at Cortinas High School, and this is one of our vocal jazz groups, Singers at Grand Arts. And we're gonna sing a piece that was written in the 50s for an international children's choir, and it really kind of embodies this idea that music brings people together in a world where lots of people try to break people apart. So this is a piece that was written for that children's choir that met in Long Beach, and recently this arrangement was written by a professor at Howard University to bring together people from all across the US to do a virtual version of this. So this is Let There Be Peace on Earth, arranged by Reginald Bowens.
Let there be peace on earth and let it begin. With every deed and word I speak, restore peace again.
Let there be peace on earth, let the moment be now, when every man and woman understands their power.
Let there be peace on earth and let it extend to every border near and far. Restore peace again. Let there there be peace on earth, and let this be the day when all humanity will raise their voices to say, let there be peace, 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 let there be peace on earth. Let it begin with. Let it begin. Let it begin with. Oh. Let it begin with me. Peace on earth. Let it begin with.
Let there be peace on earth. Thank you to the students of Cortina's Visual and Performing Arts High School. We should do that every morning, don't you think? Okay, we need a moment as we invite our panelists to come forward, and our AV team is getting us set up for the main discussion today. I'm going to provide a few opening remarks to frame our time together. How many of you experienced joy just now? How many of you had joy, that students brought you joy? Joy is an embodied and often nonverbal experience. It's personal and different for each of us. We, the convention committee, assert that integrating creativity and the arts into leadership needs to be elevated as an essential practice because it engenders the kind of joy that is needed in order to fight for justice. Let us remember that joy and happiness are connected but not the same. We are not talking about fleeting joy, although sometimes buying a new outfit helps. As Dr. Tynes reminded us yesterday, joy is both the meaning and the fuel of life. Even in the face of oppression and obstacles, people experience joy. Joy is an act of resistance. Ask yourself, when have you experienced joy during this UCA convention? It might have been at a presentation when you were celebrating a colleague's achievement, or a new idea that you heard that inspired you. Perhaps you reconnected with an old colleague, or maybe you sang a song in community with others at karaoke night last night. Maybe you connected with someone across a language other than English, or maybe you met a new person from another country or state. How can you have more of these moments in your daily life? We hope that these experiences help you to reflect on why it is important to experience joy in the face of oppression, obstacles, and resistance. On behalf of the University of California, Berkeley, as well as our sister institution, UCLA, we welcome you to the Golden State, otherwise known as Cali, or maybe you know it as the Left Coast. Having the UCA convention in Los Angeles gives us a chance to learn more about some of the ways that California is implementing equity-focused improvements at the local, regional, and state levels. While not a panacea, there's a lot to learn from our nation state, where we educate 5.8 million students in our public schools, more than any other state in our nation. Our students are diverse and multilingual, 80% students of color in California public schools. 35% are what are called forever English learners. Strange term, I know, but it comes from an evolution of thinking of students as being bilingual or trilingual over time. 30% of our schools are located in rural settings, something many don't realize. In recent years, the governor and state policymakers have invested in the implementation of ethnic studies, reviving arts education programs like the ones that we just heard, expanding community schools initiatives, creating universal pre-kindergarten for 4-year-olds, and serving students in expanded learning, which includes the summer, breaks, and after school. At the same time, California faces workforce shortages, unprecedented superintendent turnover, school board recalls, raging wildfires, and significant population shifts. California has recently moved up in per pupil spending from being at the near bottom nationally to about average, depending on how you calculate it, resulting in the familiar challenges such as teachers as de facto first responders, the lack of librarians, internet connectivity challenges, labor actions, and educator preparation deserts. Since 1996, when Proposition 209 prohibited affirmative action, otherwise known as race-based admissions in higher education, we have been finding ways to effectively ensure that access to university for first-generation students and dreamers, as well as other underserved communities, continues. In this panel, you will hear from leaders and scholars who have been working and advocating for equity in California for many decades. We calculated the collective number of years that we have worked in public education: 197. Specifically, our panelists have been asked to discuss aspects of positive psychology and positive schooling strategies. They will help us connect how joy in students, leaders, and faculty are in service of equity and justice. And we'll also provide some additional highlights of local leaders in Los Angeles that the convention committee identified as other examples and inspiration. You in the audience are invited to you're invited to participate. And hopefully my AV friends are going to help me advance the slide to the slide that has a QR code to a Padlet. And on that Padlet, you can just scan the code. You're welcome to participate and add your questions, as we'll have a section for questions from the audience. Well, let's get started on talking about what works. Let's see. Do I have the advancer? I don't think so. All right. So we're going to just give everybody a moment to get organized here. Panelists, in her latest podcast entitled Reimagining Democracy for a Good Life, Angela Glover Blackwell, the founder of PolicyLink, shares that hope is a discipline. She says democracy isn't dead. It just needs to be reimagined. It is important for activists to be conscious of maintaining a sense of deep satisfaction in what they do. And so for this opening section, Please introduce yourselves briefly, as the longer version of your bios is in the program. And please share with us how you have personally learned to sustain your joy as you have contributed to justice collectively 197 years.
Good morning. Great to be with all of you. Welcome to Los Angeles. Pedro Noguera. I'm the Dean of School of Education at USC. So this is home for me now, originally a New Yorker. After this election, it's taken a while to think about how to recover, how to start to think about resisting, and reclaim some sense of joy and hope about the future in the face of what we know is going to be an onslaught of attacks on education, on justice, on equity. They're better prepared this time than they were last time, so we can be sure that they're going to be relentless. At the same time, we also know that during periods of turbulence and conflict, it is essential to try to maintain a sense of peace in yourself. And that's something I've been doing. I'm a meditator. I meditate every day. And I would encourage those of you who've never considered it to explore it, because it's free and it works. And right now, because joy is something to aspire to, but peace is something that's essential, because you can't do good work if you're feeling stressed out, anxious, depressed, and worried. So I really want to invite you. There are apps that can help, but I would say, as I'm not a teacher, but I am definitely an advocate of the benefits of meditation.
Morning, everyone. I hope you're enjoying Los Angeles. I'm actually originally from New York, like Pedro, and you heard that hope is a discipline. Well, joy is a discipline too. The joy is not just going to meet you and say hi. You have to establish joy in your life, right? And so meditation is very critical for me as well. On my to-do list, there's time to meditate, and I love music. Music brings me joy. Just hearing these young people sing, that really enlivened my spirit. It brings back to when my father used to sing in the morning to me, and in the morning and at night. So it brings that amazing memory. And coming from Puerto Rico, music and dance is very connected to who I am as an individual. So you all have traditions in your life that brings you back to those days of innocence, right? And it's really important to connect to the past, even though you're living in the future. Who are you, right? Who are you as an individual should bring you joy, because you bring a very important belongingness to this world. So how you express yourself as an individual, that brings that joy, that feeling of flow within your life. Just as important, there are joy suckers in the world. Some you can't avoid. They may be in your family. Try to stay away from toxic people, because they can be infectious sometimes and bring lack of joy or remove your joy from you. May try to change them, but it's very hard. You only can change yourself. So just be aware of your surroundings and try to bring peace and joy, but also be aware that there are things. And sometimes this also takes away from joy. And I try to spend an hour or two away from my cell phone and just go out and walk in nature and really connect on who I am. So, again, joy is a discipline. It just doesn't come to you. You have to fight it for it and establish time for it.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Marco Nava, and I'm an administrator here in the Los Angeles Unified School District. So it's very nice to welcome you all to Los Angeles. I joke around and say that my mother dropped me off in kindergarten and never picked me up, because here I am still working for LAUSD 50 years later after that first day in kindergarten. And I had a very interesting, for the most part joyous, experience in public schooling in Los Angeles schools. I grew up in a racially isolated neighborhood in Southeast Los Angeles, and I grew up in poverty. And when I went to school, I mean, at home sometimes, I went hungry because sometimes we didn't have enough to feed all of my siblings. But in school, I had 2 hot meals every day. And it was a time when they were still cooking, preparing and cooking meals, not just reheating them. At home, my parents, they only had a 5th and 6th grade education in Mexico, and they did not speak English. So they could only support my education up to a certain extent. But at school, I had highly prepared teachers that were, for the most part, caring people and administrators who wanted to see me succeed and would do what they could to help me out. And finally, at home, even though there was much love, there was some, adversity. So there was some dysfunction. But when I went to school, there was order, there were rules. And even though it was not perfect, it was a safe space for me to be. And so I really enjoyed that piece. So that's why I derive a great deal of joy from my work, working with Los Angeles. And yes, my family brings me a great deal of joy as well. But in my work setting, the work that I do now, recruiting paraprofessionals from local neighborhoods to become teachers in our schools. And then when I see them and they come and tell me, because of the tuition reimbursement that the district offers, I was able to complete my degree and become a teacher. And some of them clear their teaching credentials with us. And it's at no cost. And we see teachers all the time who say, because of the program in Los Angeles, not only did I survive my first year of teaching, but I thrived, and I'm still here. And many of them go on to become administrators within LAUSD. So I get a deep sense of satisfaction from the work that I do. Thinking back to how I arrived at this point, as a paraprofessional, I was lucky. There was a professor from Cal State Dominguez Hills, so if there are any Toros here, go Toros. He came to the school recruiting paraprofessionals to become bilingual teachers. And I just happened to be at the meeting where they were sharing information. And then simultaneously, at the same time, or serendipitously, I met this amazing young lady who inspired me to do more with my life as well. And that young lady is here today, and we've been married 33 years now. Gracias, Landy. So. But those 2 events really changed the trajectory of my life in a positive way. But that was by chance. And I don't like to leave things up to chance. So today I'm very intentional about the way we recruit people into the education field. And it is by design that we offer tuition waive programs, because that can be a barrier. Cost can be a barrier for many people, especially a diverse teaching and leader workforce. So by eliminating that barrier, we've been able to staff our schools with highly effective teachers and highly qualified school leaders, many who come from the neighborhoods that they're working in, many of whom who have high stakes in those neighborhoods, and they want to do good. They want to do right by our children. And so with our pathways, we're able to provide highly prepared teacher to take care of our kids. And so now, again, for me and for my team, I have some colleagues here, Jeannie and Lily, they're joining me today. We all talk about how fortunate we feel to be doing the work that we do. And it is not easy by any means, because we are always struggling for funding to advance different types of agendas or programs. But in the end, we all feel that deep sense of satisfaction regarding the work we do. And so to all of you, thank you for all the work you do, because I know there are many students out there who think of you fondly, because many of you were their teachers or instructors now. And I know that they bring, or they remember, a lot of joy as they recall their experiences with all of you. So thank you all, and welcome again to Los Angeles.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Dr. Adam Clark, and I'm the superintendent of the Mount Diablo Unified School District in Northern California. I was born and raised in Berkeley, California, and I've only lived in a 50-mile radius from where I was born. So I'm kind of sheltered, but I'm sheltered in a way that really promotes diversity and belonging. I was raised in a household with two parents who are educators, and we didn't have much, but we had family, and there was always a focus on working hard and doing what's best for the young people in the household. And so when I went to school, although I had many challenges in school, I did lots of fighting, got sent out of class a lot, typical young, angry, young man just trying to find his way. I had some amazing teachers along the way who really mentored me and helped me really look inside myself and see that positive person inside. So as I've transitioned into education, started off as a camp counselor, a substitute teacher, who was given a full-time teaching job after his third day of substituting. I always just really marveled in the opportunity of impacting young people. And so the way that I continue to find joy in the work that I do is kind of what we saw this morning. When you saw those young people performing in front of us this morning, the problems, the challenges of the world were not on their minds. They were doing something that they enjoyed doing. They were performing for us. They had an instructor who was here guiding them. And when you focus on that, on the mindset of our young people, and you just try to bring positive experiences to them, what else can you do but find joy in this work? And so I really have always used that as a guide, is just focusing on the simple things of the great work that we can do. So I've done hundreds of hours of supervision. And so as you're standing out on the playground watching children, just basking in that moment and watching the kids laughing and playing, having conflicts, solving those conflicts, but also just taking a moment and looking at your surroundings, looking at the mountains, the trees, whatever's around you, and just taking a moment to appreciate what is taking place. And so that brings me a tremendous amount of joy. I would say probably the challenges that I face and what conflicts with that is when I come into contact with adults who don't appreciate the opportunity and the privilege that we have to impact the lives of young people. And once I was able to tackle that frustration and not personalize those disagreements and see that it's more of a systemic or it's a resistant to organizational change, things on that nature, I was really able to work with those individuals a lot more effectively. So my advice, just as we're looking at this first question, is just to appreciate the impact that you all have on impacting those young people, because they don't care. A 5-year-old doesn't care who won the election. A 5-year-old doesn't care, about national events. They just care about what they're going to eat for lunch, who they're going to play with on the yard, and things like that. And if you fast forward it to a junior in high school, they're just worried about, social aspects and what they're going to do next. But the experiences that they have with those adults each day are going to impact them as they go forward. And so let's do our best to make sure that those are positive interactions. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Pamela Maddox, and I'm the principal of Compton Early College, about 20 miles from here. We are home of the rising phoenix, the ever-rising phoenix. I can say that brings me joy is that our results, the outcome of our what we do every day. My school is a brand new school pretty much. It's been in existence for about 10 years. I've been there 8 of those 10 years, and since the beginning, we have had 100% graduation rate. We have had 100% college acceptance. Yeah, that's something to clap about. 75% of my students are accepted. I'm sorry, 75% of them complete high school with an Associate of Arts degree. So they are dually enrolled in high school and college. So what brings me joy? That brings me joy. Every day that I walk out on the campus and I can see the students and hear their conversations. And let me not forget, since we're in California, we are a California Distinguished School, and we are ranked in the top 2% of the nation. So that brings me joy. Every day that I show up and see what they do, and everyone says, well, how do you do that? Well, it's not me, it's the students. I am just their fearless leader who wants to take them to where they want to go. I show up every day asking them questions. What is it that you want? What is it that you need? Because it is about them. We're all here for students, for children. So every day when you go to work, you have to think about what they want. My joy is deeply rooted, deeply rooted and grounded in my belief that transformative power of education is why we do what we do. I believe that education is the art of changing lives. We change lives daily. It's not like only at graduation time. Every day that we show up, we need to show up for them and think about what their needs are. That should bring all of us joy. I focus on finding joy for myself every day, and I think about what's best for me and my health so that I can stay healthy for my students. If I'm not healthy, I can't do for them. So I try and take a little bit of time every day just to exhale and breathe. But I know that every small victory that we make is a great victory for their future. I have a mantra that I say every day in the morning when I make announcements over the PA, because I think it's important for us to greet our students and our students to know that we are there for them. I tell them that every day is a good day to have a great day. Let's plan to have that great day. It's part of who you are and what you deserve it. You deserve to have a wonderful day. So, and I tell them to be proud of themselves. We have to encourage them like we encourage ourselves. We have to encourage our students, and that should bring us joy. You know, we have to be able to sustain their lives for those 4 years. And actually, I have a span school. I have a school that's 6 through 12. So I guide them from the 6th grade to the 12th grade. I watch them grow. I watch them glow. I watch them achieve many things and accomplishments. But I think it's so important that we know and have the pulse of what's happening on our campuses and with our students. That brings me joy. Absolute joy. So what I would like to leave is that, you know, we need to share in the passion of our students. Sustaining their joy is not easy. Sustaining the justice for our students, it's not easy. But I've learned that it's a purpose. We have to wake up with a purpose and know what we do, how we do what we do, and continue to sustain it year after year and continue to grow year after year. But it's a privilege to do what I do. It's a privilege to, and I tell my parents every year, thank you for allowing me to guide your children every single day, because it is my absolute joy to do it. So hopefully, you know, if you are planning to go into education and to be an administrator, yeah, it's a joyful thing to do every day.
Thank you, panelists, and thank you to those who've submitted questions for our panelists. Some of the questions you have really relate to the second question that we prepared. In the piece that you see on the screen, Jose Ramirez, a local artist who is also an intervention specialist at Esperanza Elementary School in the Pico Union neighborhood of Los Angeles, and will be with us tomorrow for our session, by the way, critiques the factory model of schooling. Look at the faces of the children in this image. Is learning joyful there? And in fact, that's what some of you are saying in the audience. Test prep, assessment, too much accountability is actually deterring us from joy. So I love to do these hypothetical questions. And we're going to give a hypothetical question to Dr. Clark and then Dr. Maddox, because they're the closest to schools right now. If your budget was magically increased by 30%, and I'm going to add something, and you're not facing any cuts, how would you dismantle parts of the factory model of schooling to bring more joy?
Yeah, so currently, if my budget was increased by 30%, I'd have the union president knocking on my door. The district people understand that. So really, you know, there has to be a look at education, not only in the K-12 sphere, but also in higher ed. So things like standardized testing, AP scores, GPAs, all those things that we control in K-12 are a catalyst for students entering into higher education. And so let's just say that we were able to still do some wonderful things and we didn't have to worry so much about college applications, because that really does drive a lot of the things we do. But if we were able to set that aside, you know, things like project-based learning, things like having students work in multiple grades together, depending on their level of progress. Those would be kind of those out-of-the-box thinkings that we could implement. Having students work on a project over time and, you know, not be broken down on quarters or the semester or the trimester systems, things like that. So if we could do away with some of those timelines that really restrict the work that we're doing. I mean, in a high school factory model, you're in class, you know, 40 to 55 minutes, right, daily. And so how can you really go deep into learning, deep into discussing concepts and doing those types of things when you have a schedule that is so rigid around time? So the things that I would look at is implementing more project-based learning, giving students choice and exploration, and really giving them hands-on experiences on solving those environmental and life and local challenges that we all face. Things like creating, you know, solar systems, you know, solar panels and things like that at very young ages, so students understand, you know, alternatives to energy and things like that. Down in LA, they do a great job, and I know in, you know, in LA Unified and in districts like Compton, they're bringing arts and music into the schools and really taking that and taking that project-based learning around something that young people want to learn about and then letting them expand. But so often our curriculum is driven by state standards and by what the colleges want. And so that's how, if I had a 30% bump in my budget and I was able to work with our associations, I would look at more project-based learning and expand time on learning.
I would do everything he said, and some. And I would spend the money really, really fast before they changed their minds. So, but I would do the same. I would reimagine how time and space are used. The traditional rigid scheduling reinforces the factory model, but instead I introduce flexible scheduling, create personalized learning paths, smaller class sizes. We all want smaller class sizes. Adaptive technologies, flexible class schedules. I would move beyond the rigid timetables to accommodate our dual enrollment commitments, which is the wave of our future. Innovative learning spaces are so important. Redesigning classrooms to be collaborative and dynamic so that students can be more creative. I would definitely have more wellness and joy initiatives in the schools because mental health is so important. That support is so very, very important. Therefore, I would include more counselors and implement school-wide wellness centers that would support students' health. And I would definitely celebrate learning. We don't celebrate learning enough. When we talk about it, we want them to accomplish, you know, great GPAs, complete your A through G requirements, all of those things, but it's like they're forever in a race. So we need to establish frequent opportunities to recognize student achievements and growth and to show them that this is great, you accomplish this, and to create a culture of encouragement and joy. Because I have a dual enrollment program, the bulk of my budget will be spent on just expanding it, the accessibility and awareness. I would go on campaigns and educate students and parents about the benefits of dual enrollment, and including the cost saving, the early college credits that you earn, the exposure to higher education and the benefits of it. Again, counseling support, because I believe that counselors are the gateway, the gatekeepers of high schools and in middle schools and elementaries as well. I would strengthen the ties with my community colleges and the universities to offer a wider variety of courses, create pathways that align to our dual enrollment program. Also, the integration with the high school curriculum, with the college curriculum, so that students don't continue to take the same classes over again. This integration reduces the redundancy. And it creates a strength in mind that students, we are completing our tasks, we are being successful. But the most important thing, I think, is a great support system. Creating positions so that students have someone to go to. Counselors have their hands full. They have huge caseloads, but we would love to create positions that just work on student success, student support, student success. Being there for students and knowing that they can do and will do because we are there for them, it would bring them so much more joy. But always, we need to look at what is best for students. So I would love to adjust their schedules to accommodate this commitment to this dual enrollment process, because it is not for the faint of heart, but it is for those that want more for themselves. But by breaking away from this rigid one-size-fits-all model, I think it reemphasizes that learning and the opportunities for learning is valuable and is available. It just needs to be supported.
Thank you, Dr. Maddox. I'm going to invite Dr. Noguera to make one final comment on this question, and we'll start the next question with Dr. Nava.
So I want to reject the premise that money's the issue. I don't think money's the issue. What I've seen, is it on? What I've seen over the years, you put more money into a failed system, you get more failure, right? The system is designed to produce what it gets now. Right? So you have to rethink the whole system. So a lot of the ideas I heard, I think would help if we brought music and the arts, if we changed the schedule, but we have to stop rewarding passive learning, right? And compliance. And we have to promote active learning and empowerment amongst kids and teachers. So where's a model of that? How many of you know the big picture schools? Okay, check them out, because they actually have a model where it's about relevance and applying what you learn in the real world, and kids come out of there with a clear sense of who they are and what they want to do. That's what we need to focus on. How often do kids come to you and say, wow, what a day, I was inspired? Almost never.
I think that was enough for that question. Our third question is about is really about the research community and what we're doing to elevate and realize joy and nurture educator well-being. In yesterday's opening session, my fellow convention committee colleague, Matt Militello, described the power of Judy Baca's work, which we're using this year at UCA, as images that honor the power of place with its rich and complicated history. And we at UCA are joining her in honoring that wisdom. So UCA's vision is to work towards the transformation of schools and school communities to create equitable, ethical, and socially just outcomes for every child. It's written in your program, I found it. So what are we doing, research community? What are we doing to help realize joy and nurture educator well-being? Dr. Nava.
Thank you. So prior to the pandemic, our team was doing quite a bit of reading on compassion fatigue, and specifically we were studying Dr. Jacqueline Ollison's work at UC Berkeley, and we started hearing from many of our teachers and administrators of how tired they were feeling, how exhausted they were feeling. Then we had the pandemic, closed all of our schools. Teachers went home to teach virtually, remotely. And for many of them, their spouses, if they were married, they were also working at home remotely. And if they had children, their children were engaged in online learning. So there were these small spaces where people were trying to get their work done or get some learning done, so the level of exhaustion and anxiety started to go up dramatically. And we started to hear from, again, our teachers and administrators saying, is there anything that human resource can do to help us? Because we just feel like we're drowning. And so our chief human resources officer at the time asked, is there anything that we can do to help? I know we can't change the structure because schools are closed and this is our reality. And we really felt for our school administrators, because not only were they leading their schools virtually, but they were going physically to campuses to ensure that all of their students had some kind of device and Wi-Fi connectivity device so that they could connect and still receive their instruction every day. And so they were out distributing devices, and then they would go online and hold their faculty meetings online. And so we were asked to do a wellness for administrators, professional development. And so I looked at our team and I said, here's our challenge. We are going to try to help our teachers and our administrators nurture their well-being because we don't want them dying on the vine. The problem was none of us were experts in wellness. I mean, some of us, like Dr. Noguera said, we might meditate, but we do it personally. Some of us like to go out and walk, but that's for our own enjoyment. We've never taught that. So we started to shift some of our research to find out what are some really good practices. And then we developed 10 hours of content, and we called it Wellness for Administrators. And in these 10 hours, we selected different activities, but we did the research behind the science as to why they were good. So when we scheduled this, the focus was on the adults. So we told them there is no triple track agenda in this professional development. This is all for your well-being. You're taking care of yourself. You have permission to put on your oxygen mask first. And as we did these different activities, we would drop those nuggets of science. So for example, when we did meditation, we would talk about the science behind that shows how it helps to reduce anxiety. When we did intentional breathing, we dropped little science nuggets about how that oxygenates the blood, right? So all these little things. So we did neurographic art, we had meditation, mindfulness, we did all kinds of different activities. This was all done virtually on Wednesdays from 5 p.m. to 6 p.m. And it was voluntary. So with the first group, I was given a budget for 50 school leaders to participate. Within 1 hour, the course filled up. So I went back to our chief and said, can I have more money? And interestingly, we did get like this injection of money from the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant in California. So I did kind of have that 30% or more because we compensated our administrators for participating because they were doing this during their non-instructional, non-work time. And we believe that financial wellness is also a thing. And so they've signed up and they enjoyed it, they loved it. And what we found was that it was beneficial for the team that was conducting this as well. And I will say that there was one example where one of our assistant principals, she lost her father to COVID and she was ready to quit. And she said, if it wasn't for this class with my colleagues and we're all learning and focusing on ourselves, I don't think I would have made it through the school year. I would have resigned my position. But because so many people were feeling isolated in this communal space where we were connecting, she had a lot of that support she needed to help get her through this difficult time. Another assistant principal later shared that he had a lot of anxiety and his blood pressure went up really high and he had to be hospitalized. And as he sat in the waiting room to be seen, he thought, oh, I've just learned all these different techniques that might help me relax. So he started doing some intentional breathing, some of the tactile types of movements that he learned. And he said that when they did his intake, his blood pressure had normalized and he was feeling a lot better. And he was so excited to share this impact and how good it was that when he saw us, and I'm quoting him, he said, "This shit works." It's like, Yeah, except in academia, we don't call it that way. We call them mindfulness-based interventions. There goes my water. And so we received a great deal of positive feedback. In fact, this course became so popular that to date, we've had over 2,000 of our 3,000 school leaders participate in this course, all voluntary. And one of the big things that came out of that was when they said, Marco, you're going to pay me to show up after work and engage in breathing and stretching and chair yoga? Like, I'm there. And there was a mind shift from being there voluntarily to having to, that this is vital. Voluntary to vital. We need this for our well-being. And now we've extended it to teachers, and so far we've had 1,500 teachers. We want to continue it because we have 23,000 teachers in Los Angeles Unified, so that's just a drop in the bucket. But they're sharing a similar experience in these courses. And of course, all of us are educators here. You know how we think. Even though we tell people no triple track agenda, you know what they do. They go back to their classes and then they work with their students. They teach their students some of these strategies. Our principals are using this in some of their professional development. I think another big theme that came out of this was, in addition to that mind shift from voluntary to vital, was when we began, people were saying, we're languishing, like we are dying here. And there was a mind shift from languishing to flourishing because their perspective had completely changed. And when they saw the district, human resources, is going to invest in my well-being, they felt that sense of value. And so that really helped to shift that narrative as well in their minds. And so now we're also going to expand it to our classified staff because they're interacting with our students every day. In fact, we have about 13,000 classified. That includes our paraprofessionals, our supervision aides, our after-school personnel. And they spend a great deal of time with our students. So we want them to actually benefit from this too and potentially use some of these strategies with our students. Because ultimately, we want our students to be surrounded by people who are not stressed out and hating being there. We want them to be surrounded by people who are feeling well, who are going to help our students feel well and feel welcome. And so we're continuing this work. We're continuing this effort. We do have some resources I'm happy to share. We have done some research on it, and we're happy to share our resources because we continue to develop new content and invite more of our administrators, teachers, and classified staff to participate, and we feel like it's made a huge impact on the well-being of our staff and ultimately with our students.
As we invite Dr. Escobedo to also respond to this question, I'm looking at the image on the screen and thinking, how did our ancestors manage their stress and thrive? And how do we need to go back and think about all that, their wisdom, and bring it forward into our modern society? Dr. Escobedo.
Right. Oh, great statement, because I'll get to that. Part of my work in the National Center of Urban School Transformation is that I seek out positive outlier schools, right? I look for excellence and equity, both, because they are both synergistic, right? And we go visit every classroom. We conduct a series of focus groups with many educators, right? I'm going to share with you a few of our findings. Number one, they're in a positive transformational culture. Culture matters tremendously. And the leader is the one many times that establishes that culture, right? These educators feel two things. One, that they're valued, but also that they're capable, that they can make a difference. Right? And that's done by design. It's not done by, just by chance, right? New teacher who comes in, they're welcomed. They have a voice. They have time to observe others, to see excellence. Other teachers observe them, and really they work on this team teaching scheme. So that symbiotic existence of being valued and also being capable is really critical to create joy. Very, very critical to create joy. And then Third thing is that they have this feeling of belongingness, right? I think when you think about the statement that was stated about our ancestors, they felt that they belonged, that this was their land. This is the place where they can talk about, their ancestors. When I hear the focus groups from teachers in these positive outlier schools, they have the same feeling of that, hey, I taught many generations, or I have parents that I taught, and they talked about this is my school. And any teacher that comes here, these are their roles and responsibilities to continue that tradition. So that sense of belongingness, that sense of being competent, and that sense of that I'm part of something bigger than myself, that positive transformational culture is really, really critical. And the voice, not only the voice for educators, but teachers want to hear the voice of students, and they want to hear the voice of parents. They're actually seeking that voice by design. It's like when you leave this hotel, you're going to get an email, right? You're going to get an email, hey, how was your stay? Did you like the food? Did people welcome you? Many of these positive outlier schools, they do that by design. They ask their parents, hey, were you welcomed when you came into the office? Do your teachers care about you? Did you get connected by one of your teachers the last couple of weeks? They monitor that data. Why? Because that feeling of that you're part of something is really critical. That brings joy. That brings well-being. I was very lucky that I was a superintendent for 11 years, and I led a positive outlier district. And I know how powerful culture is. My number one culture makers were my secretaries. There are some schools I didn't want to come back. Some of my offices, it took 10 minutes before a parent would be recognized. So I had someone from Nordstrom's come over, gave them training, that Nordstrom's approach, I love going to Nordstrom's, by the way. See this shirt? This shirt is from Nordstrom's. And what did they say? Hey, welcome. Man, you look great. You got this from Nordstrom's, didn't you? This guy is really dressed well. And that's how I wanted my parents to be treated. Oh, Senora Rodriguez, I missed you. Thank you for bringing your child here. How are things in the family? Are you being well served here? God, that culture is critical, guys. And you have to find the leverage point, for people to feel they belong.
Thank you, Francisco. So I want to be as critical of the research as I was just now of what we do in schools. So when's the last time you read some research where you said, wow, this could really be helpful in guiding work in schools? So how many of you are doing research in schools? Right. So ask yourself that question, right? Who's the audience? Who's going to benefit? Is this just so I get a publication or so I can get this dissertation done? Or is it going to really have an impact that'll benefit schools? I don't think we do research in that way, right? I would encourage you to think about what are the compelling problems in your community that you should be focused on in your research? And how do you engage practitioners in that work? Because too often the people who lend us their time and open up their schools don't even see the work later. And they're not the audience. And to me, that's ridiculous. And we can do better. So we should be thinking about who's the audience, who benefits, why does this matter? Because the worst thing to do is do a bunch of stuff that doesn't matter, that no one cares about, right? And it can't just matter to you, right? It needs to matter to others. How will this work help others in addressing these complex issues? There's no shortage of problems in education, right? So that's the good news. It's very easy to come up with research projects that are compelling and important, but if you don't start from asking what is needed now, how do we do work that's relevant and impactful, then we are going to keep producing garbage that's useless. Is that too harsh? I go to AERA every year and I see thousands of presentations, and then I ask, if everybody's studying education, how come education's not getting better? And I would say it's because it's not what it's about. We've created an enterprise that's about individual benefit, right? Professional advancement, not about advancing the field, helping schools, furthering education. So the questions we ask are critical. Are we asking critical questions that help to move us forward? How do we use learning? Here's a compelling question I'm thinking a lot about. How do we use learning to address the problems facing the world today? Right? How can we reframe these problems, whether we're talking about climate change, violence, as problems of learning? And where are there schools where students are learning about how to deal with these issues? Because those schools exist. There are schools where kids right now they're not just depressed about climate change, they're actually doing something about it in their neighborhoods. Let's elevate that, right? They're not just focused on how hard poverty is, they're actually thinking, what can we do to address poverty in our communities? So let's do research that makes a difference.
So we're getting ready to answer some more questions from all of you, and so this is my invitation for you to add additional questions, to submit additional questions. Some of them have been addressed. And before we do that, I just want to share about another community leader who's been working in a community very close nearby. It started in the 1992 Los Angeles riots. Father Boyle launched Homeboy's first social enterprise in an abandoned bakery across the street from the church that generous donors helped them to purchase. And it started as Homeboy Bakery. 36 years later, Homeboy Bakery has evolved into 13 social enterprises, including job training, holistic services, including tattoo removal, legal, educational, and housing services, substance use disorder support, mental health, and wellness. All of the work is trauma-informed, providing a therapeutic community of wraparound services focused on whole person healing. Their mission is to create alternatives to gang life, viable alternatives to gang life, while creating more inclusive, safer, and healthier communities. So, to the point that's been raised, what are we doing here? What are the implications of our discussion for scholars, for leaders, and for policymakers? What needs to be done? And I open it to the panel, and then for an opening comment, and then I'm going to bring in a couple of questions from our audience. Is there someone who'd like to start us off? Uh-oh. Somehow I thought we ended at 10:50. Oh dear. Well, we can't end now. We have to finish. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to your next sessions. But let's have a few closing remarks. Someone want to give Dr. Escobedo.
On my spare time, I'm part of the State Board of Education in California. So one of the things that we're looking at is establishing innovation sites throughout the state and figuring out how do we change the systems, kind of like Dr. Noguera said, is how do we create pockets of students being engaged with problems that's happening in their community. How do we ensure that they engage in work that not only is happening now, but may happen in the future as well, and bringing in business and assisting, having those specific partnerships with business, and having students being part of the work world. So we're definitely in the area of policy looking at establishing these sites, and we're part of the National School Board Association. There are states that's doing this where actually even students are getting jobs, high-paying jobs, as a result of these internships as well.
Yeah, I just quickly just wanted to emphasize developing leaders, right? So often our organizations are so top-down, and everything's done for compliance or for things of that nature. But when you have leaders within an organization that are innovative and want to do the right things, we have to find ways to support them. Of course, we have to put guardrails in place and make sure that they're following procedures and everyone's safe and things are aligned with the standards. But when you have people who have that spark in their eye and who really want to make a difference and want to impact their students, communities, impact teachers, impact principals, we need to really find ways that we can support them and create opportunities for shared leadership. And if they are willing to go out on a limb and take a chance to be innovative, we have to support them and guide them when they fail and to help them find the proper way to go forward. Thank you.
I would just like to add, I'm so sorry, Dr. Noguera, go ahead. Okay. I would just like to add to that I think exposure is one of the greatest gifts we can give to students. There are a lot of things that they don't know. They are students and they are learning, and they're coming to us and depending on us to lead them. So just exposing them to what's out there and the opportunities that are available to them, and then introducing them to these industry leaders or the individuals that can help support them in their journey. But I think just exposure, again, with the guardrails.
And on the subject of wellness, which I think is such a breakthrough because it gets us into health prevention. 6 out of 10 Americans today have a chronic illness, chronic disease. 1 out of 3 will get cancer, right? So how many of you have heard the term, food is medicine? Friends are medicine. Rest is medicine. Exercise is medicine. Nature is medicine. We need to be proactive in thinking about ourselves, the communities we work in. How do we promote health and wellness? And it's a moving away from the kind of Western disease focus. Not to say that we don't need Western medicine, but to say that it doesn't get us into the state of wellness. And so I really want to encourage all of you to think about all the kinds of activities we can promote that often are free, that actually help promote wellness and good health.
Please join me in thanking our panelists. It's been a joy to listen to them. And as President-elect Beard comes to give a few final remarks, I just want to say to the questions that were raised, the presence of joy does not mean there isn't also the presence of sadness or fear or disappointment or anger or frustration. These things can happen at the same time. Every person on this panel has talked about that. It's about increasing joy in the face of those emotions.
Appreciate it. Thank you all. I'm still not on. Okay, here I am. Thank you all for joining us this morning. I really do hope that you took away something that's valuable not only for your personal life, but also for your research and your practice. This session was intentionally designed with practitioners and former practitioners to serve the population that is diverse in our organization. I do want to say a special thanks, and I'm going to take just a minute, to Pedro Noguera. When I was tasked with this responsibility, I really did not know where to start. And I reached out to Pedro because I just knew him a little bit. And from the first call, he was, "Hey, Karen, anything you need?" He said, "I'm going to be in Columbus on this day. You want to talk?" It has just been a flow of support, not for just me personally, but for the vision that the committee put forward in this conference. So Pedro, I personally thank you. Escobedo shared with you a little bit about his Outlier School. It was a UCEA event in 2009, I believe, that I met Dr. Escobedo, and factually, it was in his school. We did a school site visit through UCEA, and his scores, the scores that he had in a very small urban district, were going through the roof. And I also look at outliers to study them, especially when they're doing something good. That's what a positive psychologist does, and that's part of my work. And the things he was doing in that district were amazing. That particular study was published. It's called Breaking Barriers. And I did exactly what Pedro asked and suggested and tasked us to do. Once I found that outlier and had good data about what works, I took it back to my home district. And I said, okay, if it can work in California, there's somewhere it can work here in Ohio. Marco and I sat together on a positive psychology panel, and I learned what he was doing probably 2 years ago. And I was very excited and inspired by him. So thank you both. Thank you both for joining us. And Adam is running, he's very modest, but he is the president of the California African American Superintendent Association. So he sees all of it. And he knows a lot of what is happening, not just in California. He leveraged it back to Washington, D.C. He's a dynamic speaker and an amazing man, and I just thank you for saying yes. Appreciate you. And then I'm going to say a little bit about Pam, and I'm going to shut up. Pam Maddox is running Compton. If you have any doubt about who runs K-12, I will tell you, it's women. If you have any doubt about who the black backbone is of the nurturing of our children, it's women. I was awe-inspired. I was awe-inspired by what she is doing at Compton, and I knew I just had to have her on this panel. I'm not slighting the men. I'm not. Finding men in leadership is no big thing. But when you find a woman who's moving the world, you got a gold mine. And I just thank you, Pamela, for coming in. I would ask all of you to make sure that you join us for the next general session. Thank you again. I hope that you are enjoying the conference and continue to spread a little joy.